Previously on Biblical Slavery, the Exodus 21 perspective. So yeah, I talk fast. If you want the whole perspective, you can watch the previous video.
Hey, no, stop, just calm down, don't do it.
I'm going to try to slow down for this one. Now, if a man sells his daughter as a female slave, she is not to go free as the male slaves do. This verse seems to imply that the female servants are placed in a different category compared to the male servants. When the 7th year comes, the woman isn't allowed to leave. This may seem like a form of sexism. And honestly, I can see how this is a fair assumption for someone to make. I mean, most translations talk as if there's a difference between the daughter being sold as a servant compared to the male servants being released. You could even look at the verse earlier to see the apparent distinction. But without skipping to the next verse, there are a few translations that sound different and provide more clarity to what is happening. Listen to this rendering. And if anyone sells his daughter as a domestic, she shall not depart as the maid servants depart. Doesn't it seem to imply a different understanding? It's inferring that the daughter being sold is different from other female servants. The daughter is being sold as a domestic, or in other words, likely being sold into marriage. A very simple answer. But where might someone get this translation from? An English edition of the Greek Septuagint, or the Catholic Public Domain version? Now there are a multitude of things that need to be addressed about me using this edition. First, it would seem as if I'm cherry picking which translation works best with my beliefs, as if I'm trying to do damage control. How can all these other versions get it wrong, but this one version gets it right? Just to be clear, just because the many of whatever agree on a point doesn't necessarily mean that they're right and the few are wrong. Secondly, but most importantly, I'm not comparing a few translations to many, but just two texts in which these translations derive from one another: the Septuagint and the Masoretic. Most translations of the Bible today, which people know of, primarily use the Masoretic text or other translations of that text for the basis of their translations of the Old Testament. The Masoretic text is commonly seen as the authoritative Hebrew and Aramaic text of 24 books of the Hebrew Bible. This was primarily copied, edited, and distributed by a group of Jewish scribes and scholars known as the Masoretes. This work spanned across several centuries, from the 6th to the 10th century AD. The oldest manuscript containing parts of the Masoretic still exists from approximately 9th century AD, with the oldest complete copy being the Leningrad Codex from the 11th century AD. However, over 1,000 years before the completion, there was another translation. The Septuagint, on the other hand, is the earliest Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible from the original Hebrew. It was presumably made for the Jewish community in Egypt when Greek was the common language throughout the region. This translation process began around the 3rd century BC. The name Septuagint derives from the Latin word Septuaginta, which means 70, as this is based on the tradition that the 72 Jewish scholars, 6 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, translated the Tanakh from the biblical Hebrew to Koine Greek. Despite the tradition that says it was perfectly translated, there are large differences in style and usage between the Septuagint's translation of the Torah and its translations of the later books in the Old Testament. For example, the Septuagint not only includes the 12 Hebrew books, but includes books like 1st through 4th Maccabees, the Wisdom of Solomon, and the Book of Baruch. A majority of passages that are referenced in the New Testament quote the Septuagint as it was the book at their time. For example, Matthew chapter 1 verse 23 states, "Behold, a virgin shall conceive," with the Masoretic text of Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14 stating, "Behold, a young woman shall conceive." Do you know where this line is quoted verbatim? It's in the Septuagint. There are other examples, like in John chapter 6 verse 31 and Psalms chapter 78 verse 24, Acts 4:26 and Psalms 2 verse 1, and many others. This suggests that the Hebrew scriptures that the Septuagint used for translating were different compared to the modern Masoretic. This isn't to say that an English translation of the Septuagint is the only source one should use when reading the scriptures. I'm pretty sure Moses didn't use this. I'm not a King James only, Septuagint only, NSAB only reader. They might have different variances, but the message still stays the same. But the way you can use this info is to look at Exodus chapter 21 verse 7 and understand that the same way someone compares the KJV, NASB, and NIV should be the same way they compare the Septuagint-based text to a Masoretic-based text to understand the meaning of a passage. So why do I accept the Septuagint-based text over the Masoretic-based text in this instant? There are other passages in the Bible which state how male and female servants were to be treated equally and released on the 7th year. For one, Deuteronomy chapter 15 for verses 12 to 18 seem to indicate a similar description of what is happening in Exodus chapter 21. Male and female servants are given the same rights as leaving on the 7th year. Jeremiah chapter 34 verse 9 also seemed to indicate that the Lord was referencing the command given that male and female servants are to be released on the 7th year. Some people may try to point out that Deuteronomy is a development of the law over time, that the Israelites tried to later on give female servants rights. I mean, whether you accept the document hypothesis theory or reject it, it's accepted that Deuteronomy came after Exodus. In the next verses, from Exodus chapter 21 from verses 8 to 11, it has hints of this woman being a wife of some sort. And if the passage is indicating a wife rather than any other woman, it seems like the woman may be released alongside men on the sabbatical year. The Septuagint version makes a distinguished difference to wives and other female servants, with the Septuagint and the Masoretic version of Deuteronomy, which is supposed to be a summarization and expansion of explaining how to observe certain laws, double down on the male and female servants having equal rights. So if that was the case, why does the previous verses in Exodus chapter 21 for verses 2 to 6 seem to make a designation of male servants of he and not females? The language here is specific to male servants, but it's important to note that this doesn't exclude the existence of rights of female servants. While it's true that there are instances where the Bible distinguishes between using man and its related terms, and woman and its related terms, the Bible and people throughout time will sometimes use masculine words when describing someone, male or female overall. Look into the Hebrew word of ebed, or the Greek word for pais. While both can be used to describe male servants, both can be used to describe servants in a general sense. For each case, you have to look into the context. Verses like Romans chapter 2 verse 6, Genesis chapter 1 verse 27, and Galatians chapter 3 verse 26. Now, the concept of a bride price, or dowry, depending on the culture if you call it that, is evident not only in this section, but multiple instances throughout the Bible. In simplest terms, it's the practice where the groom or his family pays a certain amount to the bride's family at the time of the marriage. This thought process of paying for the wife can be multifaceted. In some cultures, it seemed as a way for the groom to demonstrate his financial stability and ability to provide for the wife. I found different sources about the estimated amount of marriages that still perform this, and I received mixed results. Overall, for this discussion, I'm going to say that it's still practiced strong in the world. Some cultures do it, and some don't. I don't think it's wise to say that a bride price is straight up moral and beneficial to a woman, or that it's immoral or detrimental to a woman. There are a lot of factors in play. For instance, this study concluded with arranged marriage couples experience slightly more marriage satisfaction than love married couples, among other things. Or this dissertation found different scores of husband, wife, and both, whether arranged marriages or a love-based marriage, as they vary in differences and exceeding at some things compared to another. There's way more in these studies, and I should put a link in the description about them. This idea may seem foreign, especially with people living in first world countries. But there are some actions in which first world countries perform that may seem immoral or wrong from a foreign point of view. Honestly, I think it's a way more complicated discussion to have, and individuals should not give a flat-out statement saying it's immoral or moral. There had to be some type of benefit of the man for receiving a wife, and some type of benefit for the wife in the sense of stability in biblical times. Continuing with verses 8 to 9, the text suggests that women were considered potential wives for the man or his son, rather than merely servants who are not granted the benefits of the 7th-year release. If the woman is found displeasing after being betrothed, she is essentially released. The man cannot sell her or give her to marriage to someone from a foreign nation, as this would be unfair to her. He essentially offered her into marriage, and halted the process for whatever reason. This could be due to a multitude of factors, some that may be her fault or some that may be his fault. Perhaps the woman was untruthful, behaved poorly, or was perceived as lazy, or the man simply just changed his mind. This suggests that the husband should have some prior knowledge of the woman before paying for her hand in marriage, given the significant risk that she might not want to be with him and could leave freely. In verse 9, the text seems to suggest that if it was the son who was given the wife by the man, if, for whatever reason, the son and the potential wife do not get along, she should still be treated with the same respect and care as a daughter of the man. This underscores the importance of maintaining dignity and respect in these relationships, regardless of the circumstances. Indeed, verse 10 seems to suggest a form of polygamy, where a man can have multiple wives. While I won't delve into the broader topic of polygamy, including the benefits, harms, or examples in scripture, verses 10 to 11 do seem to highlight some potential outcomes and responsibilities associated with having multiple wives. If a husband takes another wife for whatever reason, he is obligated to treat his first wife with the same level of respect and care. He cannot use the fact that he has 2 wives as an excuse to treat them unequally. He is not allowed to reduce her food, clothing, or companionship. If he fails to meet these obligations, she has the right to leave. This underscores the importance of treating each wife with respect and dignity, not merely as an additional member to the household. In conclusion, verses 7 to 11 provides a nuanced perspective of the rights and roles of women in biblical times in regards to marriage. There are indeed some aspects that require a furthermore separate in-depth discussion. The main takeaway is that there is a difference between the maidservants and the daughters given by the father into marriage. These verses seem to offer additional protection for the woman, particularly in situations where the man or son decides to take another wife or isn't pleased with her. This underscores the importance of maintaining respect and dignity no matter the circumstances.